This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as investment, tax, or legal advice. Any examples or frameworks discussed are general in nature and may not be suitable for all investors. All investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. Past experiences and planning approaches do not guarantee future results. Had a very interesting conversation this week with someone who is preparing to leave a pretty good sum of money to their child. And they're concerned about a lot of different things, mostly how to make sure that their child can survive the rest of their lifetime on this amount, because the parent isn't really confident that if they just had full access to the money, that they would be able to curtail their spending and make it last. So some of the big questions that came in were, how do I protect my grown child from their own spending habits, but give some latitude to my successor trustee, who is going to have to deal with doling out the money and having discussions about why they can send out some money and not others. The client's also wondering, how much should I actually be giving my child so that they're covered, but then they don't overspend? It's driving them crazy because they just don't know the right answer. And they've even said to themselves, I'm trying to manage this situation from the grave for potentially 50 years. And we had to have a frank discussion about how you can set things up to best protect and make the situation as good as possible now, but you really don't have control and you have to accept it. It's a tough pill to swallow, but that's the reality of the situation. And that's the reality of all our situations. Once we're gone, we can't truly control things. We can put up roadblocks, but when you're not physically there, a lot of your power naturally goes away. So we talked about different arrangements for the trust. And what's interesting in this particular case is a lot of the money is coming from a tax-deferred account. So it does have to be distributed within 10 years. If it goes straight to the child, then they get all that money within 10 years. And that's a big risk in the situation. But if it goes to a trust and then the successor trustee holds the money back, and by that I mean they don't distribute it to the child, then they run the risk that there's going to be much higher taxes paid. So the child will lose some money. It's just in a different way. Now, granted, they don't lose all the money, or they don't spend all the money, but more of it would go to the government in this case, because the trust tax rates increase to the top bracket very, very quickly, much more so than a natural person's. And it's an interesting case because there's no good answer. There's some level of risk involved with either decision. And beyond that, there's a lot of smaller decisions to be made that just can't be predicted. How much to leave the child on a monthly basis. Obviously, you don't want too much if you're concerned they're going to spend it. Again, you don't want it to be so little that it might cause them financial hardship in the future. You can always set a floor and give the successor trustee the ability to dole out more, but you might create a difficult situation, difficult relationship with your child and the successor trustee. So that's something else to think about, is what are the interpersonal dynamics at play? And you can know about them now, but the further you get into the future, the more uncertainty you have. And then ultimately, you can't control your child's behavior for the rest of their life. Even if you're alive, you still can't control it. So what makes you think you're going to be able to do so when you're not around anymore? Now, there's all different kinds of dynamics that can be at play here too, emotionally between parent and child. You know, if the child is able to support themselves right now, and then they get more money coming in later, there's a thought that goes through your mind, well, they're already doing fine now. Do they really need any more? What should I do with this money that's not going to go to them? If they're not living up to what you think might be their full potential, there's definitely some room there for resentment, especially if you worked really hard to earn that money and then all of a sudden the money goes to the next generation, and you feel like they've got an additional paycheck for nothing. So it can bring in thoughts of, is this really deserved at all? But ultimately, whatever you die with, you have to decide to do something. It's not like it vanishes with you. It's going to go somewhere. You go to charity, your children, or some other person, or it goes to the government if you don't plan the tax situation well. So ultimately, there's a lot to think about in a lot of different ways for leaving money to the next generation, especially when you have concerns about whether they're going to be good stewards of that wealth and what kind of lifestyle you want them to live. And not just from the perspective of how much stuff they can buy, but what is the quality of life that they're going to lead and what good can they put out into the world as a result of having this financial backing.